This edition of GatherGeeks is brought to you by the Time Center, the Midtown Manhattan event venue that makes a statement of authority when chosen to be the home for your next event. Go to thetimecenter.com to schedule a tour of the space.
Are you a follower? Okay, so we're gonna probably add
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth, here we are, another edition of GatherGeeks.
What a treat we have today. This is our first live GatherGeeks episode that we are presenting. We brought an audience to the Time Center here in New York to talk about best-in-class conferences and where the innovation is happening.
This was really a great experience to see the eyes of the people listening. It made it much more authentic, and we were able to sort of change on a dime based on the reaction to people. I think that our panelists really love the idea of interacting and working off of each other. The idea of live podcasts are about the hottest thing going right now, and we're seeing it everywhere. The Time Center is the perfect place to do it. The sound was perfect. The seats were comfortable for the audience. It was such a great experience.
We had a stellar panel of conference producer pros. We had Ladan Wise of TED, Candace Montgomery of Essence, and Shital Patel of NationSwell. And we got into the details of their particular events and then tapped into their collective brainpower on developing new concepts, single track versus multi-track, event technology, and how they use data to shape content, where to focus your budget, and what's the next big area of innovation, as well as, David, you were in the audience taking questions.
Well, we also discovered that the mashed potato bar is not coming back.
Okay,
although there was some controversy over that.
That's a teaser. We did get into catering as well. All right, well, let's get to it and take a listen.
I'd like to introduce you to David Adler, Chairman and Founder of BizBash, and Beth Kormanik, Editor-in-Chief of BizBash. Thank you.
Welcome. Here we are, Beth, our first GatherGeeks podcast live, kinda.
Yes, we're so excited that you're here for this groundbreaking event for us. So we have this podcast called GatherGeeks, where we talk about issues that matter to event organizers. And we thank you for being here for our first live episode. We have a terrific panel for you today. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. So please help me in welcoming first Candace Montgomery. She is the Executive Director of Live Events and Experiential at Essence Communications. With over 20 years of experience, Candace is responsible for the production, promotional, operational, experiential, and budgetary management of the Essence events portfolio, including Essence Festival, the largest cultural gathering in the U.S. Her award-winning work is frequently featured and including in BizBash, and she is regularly quoted in notable publications. Our second panelist is Ladan Wise. She is the Deputy Director of Conferences at TED. With over 20 years of experience in product development and service design, she joined TED in 2011, heading up conference tech as part of the media and technology team. Ladan and her team designed and built TED's custom event management system, which tracks every detail, from stage content to attendee preferences. In 2019, she was promoted to Deputy Director of Conferences, where she focuses on overall attendee experience and offstage programming. Before TED, she worked in user experience and information architecture for the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Justice in Melbourne, Australia. Our final panelist is Shital Patel. She's the Director of Operations and Special Projects at NationSwell, which is a digital media company focused on American innovation and renewal, identifying and profiling social innovators who are developing impactful ways to solve America's most critical issues. With over 15 years in experience managing domestic and international programs, world-class events, and leading high-performing cross-functional teams, Shital currently leads the vision, strategy, and execution of the brand's summit programs that connect purpose-driven leaders. Prior to joining NationSwell, she was the Deputy Director of Event Operations at the Clinton Global Initiative for nearly 5 years, where she contributed to the organization's goals to drive innovative solutions to solve pressing global challenges and achieve impact. So please help me welcome them, and we will dive right into our questions.
Yep. The beauty of this is that we apologize in advance if we interrupt you, because the idea in podcasting, it's a little bit less formal than a presentation. And so when you're sitting in your car, you want it more active. So let's start with the first question. Why don't you, each one of you, explain what you do and your portfolio the way you would explain it to your mom.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I don't know if we have enough time if we're going to go that route. But for me in particular, my day-to-day responsibility is to manage our portfolio, which is about 60 events for the year. 30 of them are comprised in our Essence Festival, which is the largest, as you mentioned, cultural festival in the United States, 500,000 people. But for the rest of the year, people mostly think of Essence as the Essence Festival. We have other events that happen. And so my responsibility is to manage the P&Ls, the production, all of the vendors, all of the staff, everything that goes into our programming, the production, and the budgetary management.
Go into a little bit about what happened last week.
Yes. So last week, obviously Sunday was the Oscars, but we did a pre-Oscar event, which is I think it's our 13th annual Black Women in Hollywood. And that the event was created out of the fact that, celebrating women in front of and behind the camera in Hollywood, where they weren't obviously, celebrated in the mainstream. And so that event has become a must-attend event during Oscar week. And then we also did for the first time a conference, so to speak, our Essence House Hollywood edition, which was an entertainment conference. And it was our first ever. And I have to say, I was kind of blown away by the audience response. And we could talk a little bit about that later. But yes, we had 2 events last week, and we have another one on Thursday for Fashion Week, because why not?
We're always never rest. We can never rest, right? Let's go.
I feel exhausted. 60 events. Okay. We have, so I work for TED conferences. We have 3 normally marquee events a year. We have a lot of smaller events, but my team doesn't take care of those ones. Day to day, I take care of working with a team who takes care of the offstage experiences more than the onstage. So everything from how the space feels to the breakout programming to the connection between people and optimizing that, the communication, anything that basically makes somebody feel like they're having a unique experience and having an opportunity to connect with other people. So we have the website, the marketing, the communications, and the flow of our users. So I feel like an underachiever compared to Candace over here, but I am really busy. I have lots of emails. So.
I think we all have emails. We want to get rid of emails.
All right, Shital, what about you?
Yeah, so NationSwell, we have a membership organization of about 1,000 people located in 9 different cities across the U.S. And we put on about 125 curated events, so a lot smaller than like a normal size summit or conference. So that happens throughout the year. And then I personally am responsible for 2 annual summits that we do that bring together all those people from all around to make sure that they come together and use that creativity and come up with some of those solutions that we were talking about earlier.
Why don't you go a little bit into the Clinton Global, what that schedule was like, what that world was like?
Yeah.
That was all condensed in one little week.
Yeah, so at CGI, I was there for nearly 5 years, and I think the event that you're referring to is just the annual meeting, right?
The annual meeting, yeah.
Yeah, so pretty intense. We would spend about 1.5 years working on it, from the time that we come up with the actual date to everything that goes into the conference. I think we would end up doing something like 25 smaller events across 3 days. So there was just a lot that went into it. And then our CEO always liked to come up with stats around the number of people that touched the event. It was in the thousands, so a lot to organize, but it was really exciting and cool to have it during UN Week.
Great. We're going to alternate questions. So.
Great. So I'd love to go back, Candace, to talking about this new event that you came up with, and the idea of coming up with a brand new event, a conference that you had to create from scratch. Where did the idea come from, identifying that need, and how did you bring it to life?
So we have verticals that in the business, and the events are not just siloed by themselves. We are a media company, content, culture, and community company, and we have a website, and we have a magazine, and we have events. So everything is all working together, right? So one of our verticals is entertainment. And at the festival, we have, what we call entertainment all access. We have, a stage that's on all the time. This event was 2 years in the making. We tried to launch it in 2019, but we didn't have enough advertiser interest. And we had been trying to extend the Black Women in Hollywood brand further than, what's the next iteration? We've been there for 12 years. What do we do next? Why do people care? How do we innovate the event? And
Isn't that what everybody in this room is asking you about their event?
So we were trying to figure out how can we build off of the entertainment vertical? How can we create something that people are interested in that is more consumer facing? Black Women in Hollywood is VIP, invite only, but what could we create that consumers can go to? And so, like I said, it was 2 years in the making. It didn't launch in 2019, and we bought it back in 2020. And it was, it's sponsor revenue as well as ticket revenue. And I have to say, I'm sorry, actually we didn't charge. We didn't charge for the event. And I have to say, LA has traditionally been a tough market for audience turnout. And so we didn't anticipate that we were going to get such a huge response. We had a line, we did the event at Noya House. It was down the Noya House property, down the block and around the corner. I've never seen anything like it for anything that we've ever done in LA. It blew all of our historical data. And, obviously all of our leadership is very excited. How can we do this again? So now it's...
You had to think on your feet then with all those people. What did you do?
We spent a lot of time going out and talking to them. The thought was that it was an all-day event, 10 to 5, that there would be turnover. You would go, it was on a Friday, you have to work. People would go sit down for a few hours, they would get up, but they stayed all day long. So the people that were in the line, I almost couldn't service them. So we had to spend a lot of time massaging the line. And eventually after lunch, some people moved out and we were able to get some of those folks in, but some of them I had to turn away. But we tried to give them, gifts and things like that. We live streamed the sessions. And so we've been discussing packaging that and putting it online and sending it out in advance to the people that had registered that didn't get to see it, so that at least they got some first content before we deliver it to the rest of the audience.
Are you going to charge for it then next year? Because it's...
So that's I think we should.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
How many people vote for them to charge for it? Okay. See, we got a council here.
I'm sure my leadership will see we should charge for it.
For our listeners, that was. I
have revenue goals, so I'm probably going to charge.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else I'm wondering is you had to program that event, and our other panelists maybe can speak to this. When you're programming, how are you preparing these content sessions? Are you surveying your member community? What are you doing to get feedback on what your audience wants?
Yeah, so we have a community engagement team that's regularly in touch with all of the members, and we very much curate around what they want, what they need to be able to progress some of their work. They're all a bunch of purpose-driven leaders, so there's things that they want to accomplish, and we make sure that we hit those goals. So that's why I think we were talking about like the conference that you went to of ours back in November. We make sure that we curate, whether it's like keynotes or panels or discussions, we make sure that we're taking all of their feedback into account when we're coming up with what's going to happen throughout the day.
How do you measure? How do you do it? Like, what is the vehicle? Because surveys, we find people don't like filling out.
Yeah.
How do you know what people want?
Those community engagement folks, they're in touch with these people constantly. And like I said, we do about 125 of these smaller events where they do get to talk to each other. So a lot of it is anecdotal. And then our membership base is not shy. So they will come to us. They'll just email their community engagement member and say, hey, I'd love to see more of this, or we really love this topic. Actually, we're talking about something today in a team meeting around how we did an event on a topic around love, and people really liked that topic in this Boston area. So they did more events around things that helped with empathy. And so that was like a big thing that community really loved.
So here's a big question that I would ask. Who's in charge of listening? how do you get that feedback loop to go through the entire organization?
Well, we're pretty small,
Okay.
so we're about 40 people or so full time. So it's not as hard for us. Like we're constantly in touch.
How about with you guys? How do you get the feedback loop to go through the organization?
We actually have, very lucky, we have a survey that, no joke, it's 120 questions and takes about an hour to complete.
Really?
And we have about 300 or 400 people who complete it. So
Wow. You send this out once a year?
Yeah, every conference.
And 120 questions, it takes an hour and a half.
Not everyone gets through all of the questions,
Okay.
for sure.
Wow.
Like, what's the first question?
I think it's like, what 3 ideas did you take away from this conference? So we start kind of like fluffy. It covers everything from, did you like the coffee, to what did you feel about speaker X, to, how did you feel about this party? It covers everything, and every team is very keen to get that feedback back, because otherwise, how do you know that this experiment worked that you tried? And ultimately, it's a slightly different audience that comes back next time, but we pore over it quite rigorously. And we're very lucky that we've got so many people who give that kind of feedback.
What did you learn this year?
One of the things we learned, actually, which was really interesting, was that we had a really heavy speaker session. It was a really meaty topics, and for some people it was quite hard. And then they finished that session and came out to a party. That did not go well, because these people were not in party mode. Not everybody, but this is like a proportion of people who felt the content really deeply. So, we learned about ensuring that there's a flow, that we don't end on something super heavy and then say go into party mode straight after that.
That's a good lesson.
Yeah.
How do you you take the survey data? A lot of times people take surveys and it doesn't get transmitted properly. What is your technique? Does everyone read it carefully? Do you have?
We do pre and post data, and we have a research team that basically creates a report so that it's digestible, and then we provide the reports to the necessary teams. But then we also, I would say, our editors are always talking to her. And when I say her, I mean our reader, our attendee. So she's always on. And so we're constantly getting information about, if we haven't done the event yet and we want to send a survey, would you like to see an event that did X, Y, and Z? Like we ask those questions. Would you pay this price point or this price point? And then post-event, we ask to the actual attendees.
So what did you just learn from your last?
We didn't send it out yet, but
what did you learn from the last one you did? Like, what was
personally?
Yeah.
I did think that the event we should have ticketed so that we would have a better gauge.
Oh, so that was that. Okay.
Yes, we literally just had it on Friday.
Okay. What about the last big thing that you did? Like, we're all struggling with how do you actualize those changes, and sometimes it fades as you get, and you say it's easier just to do it the way we did it.
We definitely are not those people. We spend a lot of time looking at the information, and we take that information into how we do the next one. We are very research data focused. So if people really hate the lines, we're really trying to figure out how we lessen the lines, how we provide more food vendors so that people have less times on lines. Those kinds of things.
How do you lessen the lines? Like, other than food, have you come up with new?
Well, providing more access points to things, spreading things out. It depends for the scale of the event or whatever. We have all different types.
Plus, sometimes there's a sweet spot, right? When you have a line, it means this is an event worth going to.
So that was what everyone's take was on Friday, and I was like freaking out from an operational perspective. I was like, oh my God, these people are going to say bad things on social. But essentially, people were excited that there was so much consumer excitement that it created an opportunity for what's next.
Right.
And I think we massaged the line enough where they felt that we came out and we talked to them enough times and we talked them through what was happening that they didn't feel like we just left them outside.
Mm-hmm. How many people here, though, when they see a line, they have a heart attack? And right? Because you didn't do
Maybe
something.
about a quarter of the room.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. We'll provide live responses for our listeners here. Ladan, I have a question for you about programming. So
Do you heavily program every moment, or is there magic in the downtime? How do you manage that?
Yeah, you have to. It's a real struggle because there's a lot of great content that you want to have exposed to the world. And for those who don't know, TED is primarily a single track experience. We've recently, in the last few years, experimented with a couple of sessions with multi-tracks that are more deep dive experiential things, but generally it's one track. You cannot cut down people's snack time. Snacks are very important. So,
snacks are very important.
And you have to give them time to go and get the snacks and eat the snacks and then go to the restroom and have a conversation and then get back in there. And it's a lot of people to get in and out. So I think it's been basically the same schedule for a few years now with a couple of tweaks back and forth. And you do see, in the early mornings after a party, you're going to have slightly fewer people turning up first thing in the morning. But I think there has to be a good amount of time for lunch or a big break to allow people to have a minute, because they're not all extroverts. Some people need to go and sit in the corner, look outside the window or whatever it is. So allowing for that is critical for them to be able to absorb the next round of content that you're throwing at them.
Is over-programming a big sin then?
Yeah,
among everybody here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we try and shove a bunch of things into the break, and then people have anxiety. They're like, how can I possibly go and do that and talk to this person and go to the bathroom and have my snack? Remember, the snacks are really important.
Yeah.
So we hear about that, and so we have to ease up. And sometimes our own ambitions and our own desires to like this cool thing, and we have to say, okay, give them a minute. They have to have a rest time during this programming.
I think we spend a lot of time in general today, like on devices, and I think people want to interact more. And I find that in our work, we need to find more time where people can ask questions, that we don't just talk to people all day long, that we provide opportunities for people to stand up and ask questions. And sometimes, whether we actually take them live or we take them on social and, we ask the questions in advance and you can submit from across the country. But I think people want to have an opportunity to have a say-so or to have themselves heard. Mm-hmm. And when we allow for that, I think people feel more engaged and more part of the program. Yeah. And then it also breaks down ice. How
sophisticated do you get? There's all this talk about the guest journey and things like that, and the mapping of the guest journey. Are we that sophisticated in how we were doing it? I know a lot of the European event people are doing these very fancy journey maps and things like that. Are we?
We are not very fancy.
Okay.
We don't have very fancy journey maps.
I don't think. Yeah, we don't have like a persona of the.
Yeah.
The introvert comes in and goes and stands in the corner, and then
yeah.
I don't think we do it quite that deliberately, but I think it's in the back of our minds. Like we know that some people are party people, and they're the connectors, and they're the ones who, and we use that to our advantage. But I think it's more of a subconscious.
Mm-hmm. And how about crowdsourcing? Do you ever crowdsource any aspects of your programming? Did it work? Lessons learned? What can you share?
Questions in advance of the actual event. We like to see what people want to hear about and not just make assumptions on things like that. So we do that for some panels. It's not always possible. But yeah, that's worked out well, because then we definitely touch on things that people want to hear.
We are starting this. It's a very, what I like to call the South by Southwest model, the panel picker model. We are integrating some of that for the festival this year, but it's brand new for us. But it allows us to not have to program everything. We have added 2 more days to the festival. It was 3 days and now it's 5. Again, why not? But it allows us not to have to program everything and open it up to extend to local New Orleans and even the state of Louisiana for you to create a program that you can invite people to and be an official festival event.
How will that work? You are
Still
finding the venue?
No, so if you are an organization, say National Urban League, for example, and you want to create a program on entrepreneurship for X, Y, and Z, you can create that program. You submit the program content to us. If we approve the content, you have it in your space. You promote it. We support the promotion through our own promotion. And it's also listed as an official festival event.
And that's for the first time this year?
It will be for the first time this year.
Have you started promoting that to the community?
No, it's actually going to be rolling out in March.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that.
Do you want to go into one of the questions we have here, which maybe you've thought about it, is what's the biggest risk that you've taken that's paid off in a major way? And what hasn't worked? Like that, we learn from what hasn't worked. How many people make lessons from that?
I'll go first.
That you can talk about.
So I think what we have, we went from 2 years ago, I think actually 3 years ago, we went from being a part of a pretty large corporation, Time Inc., which is now Meredith, and then we moved on into being privately owned. And we've adopted a much more entrepreneur concept for how we roll out our programs. And so we are moving things, we have a lot less barriers and moving things rather quickly. And I think in 2019, we rolled out a lot of new programs, and we were down to the wire for promotions. These are ticketed programs, and I think one of the learnings, I would say, is being able to launch them earlier so that we can, promote them long enough, sell enough tickets. And I definitely think one of the challenges in moving very fast is, we have this mentality of, you fail fast, you get up, you figure it out. But there's also, we still have revenue goals, we still have things we need to manage. And I think knowing that you have a ticketed program, you absolutely need a specific amount of window to promote that in order for it to be successful.
TED does innovation all the time.
Yeah, I think...
What works, what didn't?
Well, it relates to the earlier question. We had a newish experiment with having our audience. We see the attendee as a community, so we kind of cultivate this community through the year. We had them submit ideas to run what we're calling discovery sessions, which are like 90-minute deep dive workshop type things. And we started doing that a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, and it was breaking away from the model of a single track experience at TED, and it really took off because what we saw was, and it was partially we did this because people really really seeking opportunities to connect amongst each other. And what you were saying before, Candace, around having a chance to voice their ideas, having a space to be able to say, well, I have this thing, because they're all accomplished people, they're all really, have lots of great ideas themselves. So that was a really interesting experiment because it was a format that worked at one of our more casual type events, and we weren't sure how it was going to take off in Vancouver, and it went really well. And it really fostered relationships and got people to dive into the ideas.
This edition of GatherGeeks is brought to you by the Time Center, the Midtown Manhattan event venue that makes a statement of authority when chosen to be the home for your next event. So if you're interested in taking a tour of the facility, go to thetimecenter.com. You'll be glad you went.
But even your parties, you've taken risks and things like that. I know that you're not involved totally in that.
Yeah. That's events, right? You've got this one shot, and you're like, hopefully it works out.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, but I mean, this is where you have a really talented team of people who they're professionals and they know what they're doing. So they have plan B, C, D, E. So we've got that covered, and I think we have to do something risky every time, or else people get bored.
Give an example of what a risky piece that they did. I remember that my friends that have been, you just don't know what's going to happen. It really is surprise and delight that's crazy.
I wish I could. Honestly, I don't get a chance to really enjoy many of the parties.
Of course. How many of us like our own events?
I'm running around. I'll try and think of one.
Yeah. Risk?
Cool moments on stage. So a CGI example was it wasn't me. My team worked really hard on doing this, where they got an emotional robot to talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson on stage. Its name was Pepper. Pepper was cool, but so many hours went behind it to make sure that it was programmed properly, and it could have been a really bad moment. There was they get on stage and then they do a bit of a fist bump, and there was a bit of a delay, and everyone was freaking out, like, is this going to happen or not? So that was like a fun, risky moment, but it actually ended up paying off. And then I was trying to think of like failures. I can't really think of anything off the top of my mind, but it's usually always...
We blank those out.
Yeah, it's like when I think when we tried to scale a lot of events internationally at CGI, we tried to use the exact same event logistics and plans that we had, but doing anything abroad is even crazier. So just organizing the staff around certain things, like we just realized that the same models don't work across
Is that a universal
everywhere.
truth that you can't, just because a cookie cutter event may not be a cookie cutter event?
That was my experience internationally, and I did CGI events in like 3 different countries, so it just
But that raises a good point about the culture of an event, right? Which you all work very hard to shape what's happening. And I think about NationSwell, when I attended your event, it's about championing people who are solving our country's problems. So how did you, as an organizer, bring that ethos to other aspects of the event production?
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you're creating an environment where people feel inspired, creative, and able to come up with new ideas and engaged. So our venue for the one that happens in New York is at the IAC building. They have like a 120-foot screen. It's pretty magical for like tech geeks. And so our creative team really had a field day programming that. It was a lot of work, but they ended up doing different images, and there was something constantly moving. And it was around the topics that they were discussing. It was a really cool experience. And then I like to switch it up with performances and things too at NationSwell. So a bunch of our members had gotten together and produced a Grammy-winning album around women's suffrage. So we had one of the performers come, and so it was like a direct connect to the community. Like everything you guys are doing is pretty amazing, and it was inspiring to have that.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great segue to talking about event technology, which can often make such a difference in the event. I'd like to hear how you integrate that into the education sessions in the event overall. So, Ladan, do you want to start?
Sure. We try and obviously showcase as much new tech as we can. There's been a holographic presenter presenting from the other side of the world. We've had drone dances and things like that. But also even the base technology we have to run the events is all integrated. So we have the talks are being filmed and simultaneously being encoded and sent back to New York on the fly, because we can't risk losing that content. So that same technology, that same system is the system that knows that you're dairy-free and you're lactose intolerant too, and you're maybe gluten-free, and that you want to go to this party and this workshop, and you signed up late, but you didn't sign up late and you got into it. And all of the things that allow us to let people have a really seamless experience without putting the technology too much in their face. We have an app, and the app's really critical, but we're trying to make the app, the technology, make everything seamless without interfering too much with the flow.
But you had to create that yourself.
Yeah, we built it ourselves because nothing we could find in the market was going to be quite what we needed. It was.
Why is that? There's so many minds in the technology world trying to figure it out, and they're supposed to be talking to us. How do they not know what we need?
Well, I think partially we had to accept that we're special snowflakes.
Yes.
Like our internal team calls our EMS, event management system, the exception management system, because everyone wants to do just like this, but except on Thursdays, it's like that. And so I think we had to accept that in order for us to do exactly what we wanted, we had to build it ourselves. And
it works, and you don't want to throw it out.
No, it grows every year, and it's critical to the functioning of our entire organisation, honestly, because the talks go through there, the speaker data's in there, the attendee data's in there, everything's in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Candace, how do you use event technology?
Well, we primarily use our festival app for registration data for, like as I mentioned, we have 25 to 30 events in those 5 days, and so it also can, every ticket you bought, if you bought 2 tickets Friday and Saturday night to the shows, if you want to go to after party, or you bought a ticket to this wellness conference, or all of it's comprised inside the app, so you can see where all your stuff is, basically your passport. And then we also are using your phone to, we have beacons around, so throughout the space. And so if you go to, I don't know, say Beauty Carnival, and there's a special, like you unlock a special promotion, you get a prompt that says head over to whatever booth and you receive blah, 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 blah. So we are using beaconing technology to engage with the audience in real time, or even if there's changes to the schedule, we're able to tell them inside the app, because a lot of times that does happen if, presidential nominee can no longer make it, and this is moved to Friday instead of Saturday. We do that on the fly, and we need to tell the audience.
Is beacon technology taking off?
For us, we utilized it last year instead of QR codes. It was more cost efficient for us, and also allowed us to talk to larger groups of people and to spend. It was more budgetary for us.
We use it too.
You do too?
Yeah.
How many people here use Beacon technology? You don't see a lot of it, right?
Not a lot of hands.
You can't, yeah. But it seems like...
Well, we have, for the festival in particular, we're using Beacon. It's a very large amount of people.
Right.
And a large amount of space.
How do you guys use it?
We use it to help people find their friends. So in the app, it tells you who, I'm looking for David, he's in the info hub, or he's in the theatre. We also use it to help you find things nearby you as well. So,
are you doing a lot of introduction stuff too? You do a lot of.
I actually would like to talk about that.
Sure, we can talk about it.
Are people excited? Are people excited about that? We just had a conversation about.
We love this one.
Using the app to help people talk to each other.
Yeah. It's a really interesting. I think that people at TED feel very safe. We make them feel very safe. We have lots of security coming in. You have to be scanned and all that kind of stuff. So once you're in the safe space, the level of people who are creeped out by this is significantly smaller than you think.
Is there an opt-out?
Yeah, you can turn it off. You can turn it off, and you can
Bluetooth.
control who uses it in the app. I mean, who sees you and who doesn't see you. People are like, it's not accurate enough. You told me they're in the info hub, but what corner of the info? I mean, come on, guys. So this is the interesting thing, because for us, because we've built the community, we can kind of push it a little bit further than what you might be able to do if you're just cruising by. I think we have a unique situation that we're in.
So when you said build a community, well, you're all building communities. Your community is like going to camp. I mean, your people are so into it that they want as much information as possible. Do you have to up the game every time?
Right. And they're there for those 5 days. They're really maximizing their time together. Yeah.
And what is their end result? What is their goal? Like when I talk to a young person about going to events, they say, well, I can scale my meetings with lots of people. I mean, it's very practical. Like, what are the practical reasons that people really go to TED?
I think that there's the people who are there for the people, and the people who are there for the ideas, and the people who are there for a bit of the middle, and the people who are there to meet, to network as a business sort of approach. Those people will soon find that approach in an aggressive fashion does not work at TED. So you have to pare back and you build relationships. So I think those two camps are pretty clear for us along the way all the time. That's how we program as well.
Is that a truth, though, that we're really finding everywhere? That people want to connect with each other, but they don't want to be sold or hustled or things like that. So you got to do it in a different way.
I mean, I think for us, we're really try to focus everything on like mission-based programming. That we really are serving Black women deeply. So that is our mission. If we haven't answered that in everything that we do, then we're really doing something wrong. So we're really, whatever it is, if it's wellness, if it's entertainment, whatever it is, we're trying to serve her need based on what she's told us she wants. And so we're constantly asking, have we answered the question?
So in a recent GatherGeeks, I asked David what the next great area of innovation for conferences would be, and his answer was personalization of content on a grander scale. So I'd love to hear everyone's answer to that question, the next great area of innovation for conferences, and what you think about David's answer about personalization.
I think you're right. I think that's a challenge that's really hard to do, though, right? Because we were talking about this backstage, actually. It's hard because everyone wants something a little bit different, and you can't customize it to every single person. So what we end up doing is a lot of just talking to people and making sure that we're taking into account the things that they really want to see and do throughout the events. And I feel like that's as close as I've gotten to it. So I'm really curious to hear what you guys think.
I think what we have done is we focus on edutainment. And so edutainment. So it's part of education, and then we bundle in some entertainment. So we've niched out our conferences, so to speak, to target, her passion. So if it's wellness, we have something called Wellness House. It's conversations and workshops about, being wellness across multiple areas, but then there's also workouts from your favorite people in the wellness space, or entertainment. So there's different conversations about if you're in the industry and you're a writer or a director or a sound person or a makeup person or want to be in the guild, these conversations are specific to you. So they're smaller still scalable conversations with entertainment mixed in, and then we package it and we specifically present it to a group of people who are interested in that information.
So instead of the mega conference where you're trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah, we try that. We don't do that anymore.
TED by nature is multidisciplinary, so we don't split up by specific themes, but when you do come, you have the choice to go on specific journeys around some things. The tricky thing is when you're trying to curate that for them, there's that fine line of, do I want to let someone go outside of their comfort zone, or do I make them go on the track that they would normally go anywhere, any other conference they go to? And so we try and figure out how to balance that a little bit, because we could say, here's your week, we've pre-planned everything for you, but we're kind of like nervous about doing that without pigeonholing people. Oh, you're a tech person, then you will have a tech experience. Maybe you don't want to have a tech experience here. Maybe you want to have a Earth Mother experience. I don't know.
And also, as the journey goes, they may get bored doing one thing and want to switch to
right.
You know, I had an interview yesterday Friday with someone, and they were talking about the personalization piece, and that just asking someone their dietary restrictions personalizes the experience a little bit. And I never even thought of that as sort of part of that process.
Right, because that's something we all do.
People want to be asked, and they want to feel part of it, and they want to be heard. And so personalization, personalization doesn't have to be curate everything. Just let them.
Being heard is really important.
Yeah.
I think people want to be seen and heard and have their thoughts shared with someone else in the space.
But the organizer has to be listening.
That's right.
And so one of the things we don't do, I think, and sometimes we're so busy that we may not be listening sometimes.
Well, I was saying about I keep talking about my event management system. Our event management system captures that at the outset.
Yeah.
And at the end, when people have finished with the conference, we send them their highlights page of their experience of the conference. Here's who you spoke to. Here's who you network connected with. Here are the events that you went to. Here's some photos of you. Yes, we can do that. It's
the
creepy.
app does that?
How does it know who you spoke
technology?
to?
It knows who you spoke to in the app because it's all connected.
Oh, in the app?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, physically, no, that's
like
weird.
it.
That would be super weird.
Well,
Can you imagine?
there's like transcription.
It's a very big brother.
Speaking of everybody wanting to be heard, we want to give you a chance in our audience to be heard, and David is going to come around with a microphone. And for those of you in the audience who have a question, raise your hand. We'll make our way to you. And
Okay, Jackie.
yeah, go for it.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Bernstein. I'm president and partner of Access New York Metro, and we're an event production and destination management company. You ladies are very accomplished, and you too, gentlemen. And it's wonderful hearing what you're doing with your conferences and innovating them. Obviously, you have a big plate of the work that you do. So I'm just wondering, and I may be speaking for other colleagues that are here in the audience, do you work with external event design, event production, destination management companies, and how do you integrate them with the fabulous work that you and your teams already are doing?
We do all the time, but we have been challenged recently with figuring out how much more we can bring in-house. But we do work with production companies all the time, as well as destination management companies, depending on the project and the budget.
Yeah, and Ladan, you have a really interesting story here.
We bought the production company that we...
That was good.
We're like, you know what, we'll just buy you. So we worked with a vendor for many years, and then they sold the company to us. So now that team is part of TED, and we occasionally bring in extra contractors to support that team because it's a lot of work during conference time. But we make them part of the team. They're not sitting outside of us. They sit with us and they work with us for a period of time because it's so weird and bespoke that we need them to feel integrated into the family.
How many people are working in TED? What's your...
So it's a big question because TED isn't just the conferences part. So we have the TED Media part, we have the TEDx part, we have the Fellows part, the partnerships team. So just the conferences group, so we have about 25 who do the production side and probably another 25 who handle the strategy and the curation side. So between New York and Vancouver.
Just say who you are.
I'm Charles Wood. I work with Viacom CBS Special Events. Curious to know what events that you've been to that weren't produced by your team that you really enjoyed, where you're really like, these guys nailed it, and what you liked about it.
Great question.
You guys can.
I went to South by Southwest last year, and I went to Aspen Food and Wine Festival. I've gone to both of them. I go to lots of things just to see how other people do things, and I like them for various reasons. I don't necessarily, I'm not always into everything that the event is doing, but I take bits and pieces back to the team, things that I think that work well. And I think as an event professional, I feel like it's my responsibility to be out in the market. And is it Cheryl? Hey.
Not yet.
It's important to be out in the market to know what's going on.
I think that event organizers have to eat, drink, and live inspiration every single day. It's the reason BizBash was started, to peek over the fence to see what other people are doing.
Let's all meet Cheryl. Hi.
Thank you. Hi, Cheryl Gentry at Glow Global Events. We're an event management company based in New York, but we do international events worldwide. Because we're an agency, we always have problems with a lot of our clients that don't want to collect data. They don't necessarily care about surveys. How do you convince your leadership that in order for their event to be enhanced or to grow, that they really need to pay attention to this data? Oftentimes, they don't even want us to send out surveys. And we are always in a constant battle. What's your strategy on explaining to them that we have to do this?
I don't think we're in the survey collection business, so we would be on your side.
Yeah, I wonder
think
if
we were talking about this backstage. Events have like a life cycle, and if you're not keeping things fresh and going, then it's definitely, if you're not listening to people and what they want, and events don't evolve enough, it's not going to live forever. So I guess that in itself is a good argument.
Like, do you want to die?
Yeah, we can be dramatic. That's a good approach.
It would be interesting to see if that's something you would take on maybe the first year and see what benefit you could get from it, and then convince the client after that.
Hi, my name is Paulina Lee, and I am a co-founder of Crew Events. It's a smaller startup company with my partner, and we actually have the opposite problem. We actually have a client who continuously asks, that's an awesome idea. I love it. Let's do it. But can you show me an example where you did that at an event and the metrics behind it when it did and didn't work? And it's like, well, we haven't done it yet, so what metrics would you like me to show you? It's how do you get someone to buy into an idea and take that risk when it's their first time around, and even though you're showing them the potential, they want to see it done, even if it was for another client, at a different event where the audience wouldn't relate and the data just are not comparable.
For us, it's the principle, because we have to take that risk all the time with all of our anything that's brand new. For us, it's what's the principle behind the reason why that experiment is good? Like, is it helping people connect? What itch is it scratching, basically? And I think that is the key, because you're not just putting it together because I think it's cool. Like, it's obviously got theory behind it. And so pulling out that theory and saying, look, based on your audience, based on what we're seeing they need and have asked for, this is going to scratch the itch.
Hi, how are you? I'm Kenneth Watson. I'm owner of Booth America. It's a photo booth company based in New York and LA. I have a two-part question. First is, how do you measure engagement of your events? And secondly, how important is extended awareness beyond the perimeter of your events to you? And do you measure it?
So for us, it's very important. In terms of engagement, we measure it multiple ways, and we look at, if it's a ticketed event, we can see how many people bought the tickets, obviously, or we see how many people checked in. We see how many shares across our social, Instagram, Facebook, all of our platforms, how much of a life it has after the event. We also measure impressions. So we are measuring engagement a lot of different ways to build a story for ourselves as well as our partners. And in terms of how we extend, your second part of your question? Awareness beyond the perimeter of the event. Same, exactly. So yeah, we go all cylinders on our programs, whether it's, again, it depends whether it's an insider event or if it's a ticketed event. If it's a ticketed event, it has a full promotions budget. And so it may include out of home, it may include paid social, it may include, our internal social platforms, as well as we promote it on our website, our newsletters. Like we go to the wall.
Hi, Alicia Shiro. I have a company called Aced Events. I have a question. So it seems like you are very engaged with your consumers and you're kind of on the cutting edge of what's new and exciting, whether that's technology or whatever's going on in the industry. Can you share some of the things that you've seen recently that have been very cutting edge or something your clients are asking for that might be implemented that's been new and not done yet?
Ladan, did holograms feel like a leap for you?
I think everybody had a nervous breakdown that conference. No, I think I can't think of anything that is about to be experimented on upcoming, but holographic speakers that present from an iPad on a stand that rolls around by itself. That was one. I think new technologies implemented as part of the standard procedure. I'm trying to think of one, and I can't think of one that's...
Maybe something sponsors did? Have the sponsors ever pushed you in certain ways to do innovative things or
everyone wants to see
ideas?
like just new things. So like people Skyping from different countries, having different, I'm just trying to think, just new displays, like rather than someone telling you that they have a new product or some sort of service, like at CGI they had, there was one technology, they used drones to help catch poachers for rhinos. So instead of like talking about it and just saying like this is a cool thing that we're doing, we actually had like a drone on stage and people loved like seeing it and like pretending like it was scanning the audience. So I think anything that you could do that's like custom and new versus just like sitting and receiving a lot of information, like people are really into that.
Photo booths are not dead. People love
Photo booths. Why aren't photo? It's amazing.
Oh my God, they love.
How many people love photo booths?
I mean, we've figured out how to create more, video integration. There's GIF photo. I mean, there's all different types, but people they just love them, all different kinds.
And they're not going away. Do you have it at TED all over the place?
It's just like a fun, silly moment.
Every year, we've had it for years now, and we're like, are they tired of it yet? Nope, still their favorite thing to do.
Seriously.
It's a cool way to like make connections.
It's not going to go the way of.
But I think that I think that you have to be still, even in that, you have to be innovative. I think, how is the set interesting?
Yeah.
Even for. Everyone has seen the Vanity Fair or the Vanity Fair photo booth for Oscars or the sets. They're creating these elaborate sets or even in style, the elevator. For us, we're doing beautiful, elaborate sets so that these are things that we want people to share and reshare on their platforms.
Oh, there's that thing where they, at the, what's it called, Super Bowl?
The Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Australia.
And then the different players come and pose with you have you seen that? It's a little video that you can take of yourself with the players, and they join you in the video. And then that was a thing that.
That's what I'm saying. It's innovating off of the same thing.
So it's not going to go the way of the mashed potato bar, where we don't do that anymore.
I still love the mashed potato bar.
I know that's.
So bring back the mashed potato bar.
No, I saw a video one, like a GQ event I was helping with. They had like a whole video. It was like a NBA All-Star event, and they did like a looping basketball, but it was like a video that they did. So they would shoot that of you while you're like spinning a basketball.
The 360 cam.
Yeah, stuff like that. That's super.
But they're all versions of
look at myself.
Creating that FOMO. Yep. So holograms are expensive. A lot of the things you talked about are very budget intensive. Do you have any go-to tactics for staying within the budget? What can you offer our audience here?
So I have to say, we are a multicultural brand, and so our budgets are not the same necessarily as general market budgets. And so we are very creative about the things that we're able to do, and we spend a lot of time in negotiation with people, or, not necessarily barter, but we utilize, sometimes we do media partnerships, or we do, any types of exchange or partnership to come up with a win-win for the partner as well as ourselves. So we are very creative about the types of things that we do, just in where there isn't a budget to support.
For us, it's around sometimes, I mean, budgets, it's all relative, I understand that, but sometimes when we're trying to do something, we realize that bringing it back down to basics and giving people a space to connect where it's a little bit more structured, and honestly, snacks, I know it's a theme, just creating that space.
Wait, what is your favorite snack? I have to ask.
I can't, I mean, that's not a fair question. I have many snacks.
Why should you have to pick?
Yeah, why should I have potatoes?
Potatoes. Mashed potato bars when you come back.
Yeah, that's right. So even just creating an opportunity for them to meet together and that feels cozy and welcoming, honestly, that sometimes is all people want. And we can do that with a limited budget.
Yeah. That's the thing they care about most.
Yeah.
I think
you think they care about, what do they care, snacks?
No,
each other. Meeting
those
each other.
experiences. But yes, snacks matter. Sometimes we get feedback on surveys and like, okay, I thought it was going to be different, but it's like, okay,
do the healthy
we
snacks
need more
work,
snacks.
Do the healthy snacks work better than the bad snacks?
They want a mix.
They want.
Yeah, because they say they don't want the stuff, but they want the sweets. It's like,
But Shital, at your event, I remember going into the bathroom and seeing decals on the wall, which I loved. By the way, you can see what that looks like on BizBash's Instagram. I remember that and not necessarily on your centerpieces. So how do you decide what details matter?
yeah, I mean, the budget's definitely a constraint there, but it's also event sustainability. That's why we don't end up doing a lot of flowers and stuff, not because we don't love them. So we do plants, we do like succulents and stuff, but then we really utilize like the graphic space that we have. So whether that's doing decals on the wall or in the bathrooms, or like any onstage graphics that you can do on an LED wall. The bathroom idea came about because we really were just brainstorming, like, how do we get our social stats up? Like, how do we get out there to more people? Because we are a membership-based community. We're not like an everyday name right now. So people were like, well, what's the biggest touch points? Like, where are people going multiple times a day? So where can we put a decal? Oh, in the bathroom. And oddly enough, like, it's a great way when you're washing your hands, you're like, hashtag NationSwell Summit. Or you're, waiting in line. So yeah, just think about like high touch points throughout the event. You can get creative there. And yeah, my team came up with that great idea and it was cool.
One of the things we didn't talk about at all, and we don't have time to do it, just social media in general. We're just assuming social media is packed into everything, correct? Or is it anti-social? Are we at the end of social media? We're so sick of it.
We are not sick of it.
You love it.
We sprinkle a little bit.
Sprinkle a little bit.
Yeah, same. I think it's a great way to feel like you're in the room when you're not in the room, or be able to share good content. So yeah, we're very much still.
What platform is the predominant platform in your view?
Twitter. It's like a mix. Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah, I think we put certain content on certain platforms depending on how. Yeah, so we put certain things on Twitter that we don't put on Instagram, and we're like really 360. So we're really in every place, but it's all different.
Great. I think we're coming down to. You have one more question, Beth?
No, I think that's a great way to end. Is there a hashtag for tonight we want to share now that we're talking about social?
Brittany?
We say hashtag BizBash for all the Twitter comments of our amazing panelists, and much Instagrammable stuff here outside in the lobby and the food that we're going to eat. So hashtag BizBash for that. And your location is the Time Center, so geotag them. So those are my shout outs.
Okay. My shout out is, next one is we have a conference in Florida. We're trying out this new speaker, Barack Obama. He should be pretty good. We're doing it with our new company that we just worked with, that we just sold most of the company to. And that should be interesting because I think Barack Obama is a collaboration artist. And we're also going to be having Capricia Marshall, who is the chief of protocol under him, and Disha Dyer, who is the former social secretary. So we're going to have the whole sort of event team down there, which will be really great. And we have events coming up in BizBash in LA and BizBash in New York coming up, so I would encourage everyone to do that. And I just want to end on one of an interesting story that, I had the opportunity, many of you know, to work for the State Department. And I did this one event with Hillary Clinton and Henry Kissinger having a conversation. And Henry Kissinger says to Hillary that, you're Secretary of State, you're drinking from the fire hose every single day. You need to find time to build your intellectual capital.
And the way you build your intellectual capital is you come to conferences, you invest in yourself. And it made me realize that that is one of the main purposes of our events, is to invest in the intellectual capital so you don't have to, you can spend it when you're drinking from the fire hose, and you can build it when you're thinking in a room like this. So that's one of the reasons I love doing this and having this great panel and doing our GatherGeeks podcast, because we need to be inspired every single day that we're in probably one of the best industries in the world, where we connect people and we don't even know the results of those connections. Those conversations can change the world because we're setting the stage for that. Great. And that's the one thing I learned from the State Department.
Great. And with that, thank you.
Thank you so much
for coming, for your questions, and our amazing panel. Please help me thank them.
Thank you. Great.
All right, David, we're back. I hope it came through to our GatherGeeks listeners how much fun and how much we learned from our first live GatherGeeks podcast.
Yeah, no, I thought that some of the comments, it was really interesting to see how the panelists learned from each other, and there was a thirst to continue that conversation because people need to talk about this stuff to be inspired and also to know what works and what doesn't work. Even in the green room, the conversation was stimulating.
That's one of the best things about being a panelist, right? You get to meet your fellow panelists and network and learn from them. So we really enjoyed that. And thank you to the Time Center for hosting us. And we're hoping to have more live GatherGeeks in the future.
So Beth, what else is going on at BizBash?
On Tuesday of this week, we are releasing the New York Top 100. This is our annual list of the best events in New York. This is a competitive list, let me tell you. And this year we've added new events. We've made some difficult cuts, and we've tweaked the rankings to reflect the best of the best in this major event city.
We love when we publish these kind of lists, and we love when people take the fact that they were on the list and put it all over their marketing because they think that it's so cool to be named to one of the top 100 in a particular city.
Many events do. Yeah,
many
absolutely.
events do. It's really been an incredible thing because people don't get the kind of recognition among their peers, and that's really fantastic. So before we end, we want to thank our people helping on this podcast, including Claire Hoffman, who helps on the editorial duties, Rebecca Pappas, that distributes it, and of course, Dave Nelson and the Lens Group for being our producers. So thank you guys, and what do we say?
Gather on.
Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.